I grew up in Florida in the U.S., and I did go to school for recording arts. I was in a bunch of punk bands, and I was a singer-songwriter for a while. I was an entertainment technician at a theme park, and eventually I was a composer and sound designer for video games and interactive media before I started doing art and focusing on that. My dad was a musician for like 50 years, and he still performs. And so I guess I just thought audio was the direction I should go in, and I was kind of naturally good at it. But when I look back, I realized that in high school I took every photography class and pottery class and drawing classes. And after that, I was doing street photography for a while. I was doing vector art during my free time during work breaks. I did pixel dailies for 100 days, just trying pixel art. So I realized that I was always interested in it. I just probably never thought it was a pathway or something I could focus on until I came into this space here. I think I got drawn into this system, like a lot of people, by Reddit. I remember when Bitcoin was blowing up, and there was all these Dragon Ball Z memes, like over 9,000, over 7,000, and I was like, what is all this stuff about? So yeah, I explored the ecosystem. You know, I invested poorly here and there. I had to create a separate Twitter account because in the video game world that I come from, everybody hated NFTs, and people seem to hate crypto, and they seem really against it. So I had to start from scratch with like an entirely new name, and just be here to participate in the conversation and see what people are up to without having to have arguments all the times about NFTs and whether they're good or bad or whatever. So yeah, I came in, I did all the normal stuff. I bought some PFP projects at like way more money than I can afford, thinking that maybe they'd be the next this or that, and watched them go to zero. I wrote a theme song for that time where people were going to buy the Constitution. Gonna buy the Constitution, you know, gonna buy it right now. We're gonna buy the Constitution, we're gonna buy it now. Since I was in audio, I was doing all sorts of like music and sound effects for little projects for fun. And of course I invested in stupid stuff like Time Wonderland and all the other like ridiculous Ponzi schemes on AVAX and FDM and all that. You know, every single catastrophe and scam that went through our system, I was probably affected in some way, but, you know, not too much. And then when I was on Twitter, I started just to see more and more art pop up, and I think particularly it's Rocket. I don't know how you pronounce it. But I clicked on their listing on Object, and I was just like totally blown away. It seemed like something different. It seemed like it wasn't art taking itself so seriously that I felt like kind of uncomfortable. It was like art that was just like, F yeah, this is cool. I like it. I'm not trying to like prove how deep I am or like necessarily mean something insanely complex. It was just something that was really fun and resonating with me. And the more I searched through Object, the more I got like totally into it. And so yeah, I started collecting a little bit here and there, and my original goal was to find someone to create art for an album cover so I could sell music as an NFT, because I thought that might be the next direction I should take. Maybe I could explore this and do music. But then I ended up trying to make one on my own and messing around with motion design and glitch art, and I really fell in love with it. So it's been about 3 years, and I've been totally into it since then. I don't think I intended on making GIFs. Originally, I was going to do music and videos and stuff, but I did always enjoy the looping format. I used to do these things called cinemagraphs where you record like a waterfall, and then you would only let the water flow, and then the rest would be frozen. Or I used to love the pixel art of like a Japanese room, and the fan is like slowly twirling in the background, and the like computer screen is flickering. Like, I just love that something could seem like frozen in time, but full of motion. So I think I always liked those, and I didn't really intend to get into those originally, but when I saw what people were doing on here, it seemed like the coolest way to do it, just because it's just like a native internet format. You can't stop it unless you move past it. It chooses on its own to keep going. I don't know, there's something kind of mesmerizing about that I really like. Yeah, when I first started making art, I really was trying to do something like these sounds and this music where like the computer like had some kind of personality, and it was like stuck inside, and it was like trying to express itself. So all sorts of like audio glitches and weird synthesizers and synth voxes and stuff like that. And when I was thinking about that, I was thinking about green screen computers, like just code and command lines and stuff. And then I kind of stumbled upon, Windows stuff and Mac stuff and old video games. Just surfing the internet, looking at different things. And I realized that to me, what retro computing is like maybe, an old terminal. But to a lot of people, it is the kind of computers I grew up with. Like, that's old because I'm old. So, like, I think I'm mesmerized with how it's, like, changed our lives, and for the good and for the bad, and I'm kind of also mesmerized with, like, how it felt to be innocent when a technology is at an early stage and it hasn't gone in certain directions which maybe aren't so positive, and just kind of the sense of being on a computer, like exploring the woods, or just going through different things, going through different pathways. And when you're younger and you're on a computer, you're just clicking on things, you're messing with files, you're deleting the wrong thing. It's kind of exciting. And I've always loved pixel art, and when I started focusing more on this kind of artwork, I realized that a lot of these icons and these backgrounds were pixel art. I love the idea of working within some constraints, and pixel art is just a fantastic version of that. Honestly, I'm not sure about how I maintain Perfect Loop's identity. I think about that a lot because I want to work on things that are more generative, things that are more noise-based, maybe abstract, maybe just some cool textures. But I think as you keep working on something, you do develop some kind of brand, and people are, they're really into that. So I struggle with that, I guess, as much as anybody else. But I do have an inkling for that there's things that people really like, and there's things that people really resonate with. And I want to stay focused on what I love, but I think also that like feeds into how you think when you're doing things. I don't think there's a way around it. If everyone said I look good in a pair of jeans and they weren't my favorite, I'd still probably wear them a lot. It's just, it's like human nature, I guess. But yeah, what guides my creative decisions is, like, the first 2 hours of any studio day, I try to work on something that's just completely ridiculous, that's silly, that's, like, stupid, like Mike Tyson being punched in, like, Mortal Kombat, not too serious. And then after that, I have this huge list in my things. Every time I have, like, a kind of a mildly good idea or something I like, I just put it in there. And then I search through the list to see whatever is an F-yeah scenario that I'm, like, super excited about. And then I will try to make it, or try to watch a tutorial that is, like, somewhat related, and just see where it goes. I do find it hard to, like, work on a whole series like this, because the passion that you originally started with becomes like a deadline, and it's almost more fun when you can do one-off. But I also appreciate the continuity of seeing them all together and seeing how they, like, span across time and how I was experimenting. So there is something wonderful in that. So yeah, like I mentioned before, I used to be a composer and sound designer, and I had always wanted to put audio in my art. But I talked with my wife a lot about it, and we always kind of thought that unless the piece could not exist without the sound, then I shouldn't do it, because I'm just kind of like forcing it on there and like shoving it down people's throats that I like music or I like sound effects. And I was messing with, pixelated feedback like I often do. And I decided to just hook up the Ableton plugin that connects to Touch Designer and just see what it's like. And I started having the MIDI and the audio affect the movement of the feedback loops, and I just felt that it seemed to be something that worked together, and it seemed to be something that coexisted in a way that I had always wanted, so I decided to experiment further. In terms of how I got the sounds, I have sounds that I always enjoyed that I think if you hear without context, you would still appreciate, like the sound of an old clicky keyboard or a mouse, or an old dial-up, or a startup sound. And in some of them, there were just music that came to my head that I thought I could incorporate and create some movement from, and some rhythm from, and some were pieces I wanted to have come out of sound, like the printers. It starts off with real printers and it turns into some kind of rhythm. And I just kind of would close my eyes and try to see what came to mind when I was imagining interacting with computers and seeing what happens from there. So yeah, using sound of the future is something I'm unsure of. I feel like it would be really cool, but I do want it to feel like it makes sense and it breathes life into something rather than it's just added on, like in post. I do want to use quantized distorted noise and screams. And as they're being quantized, I want to have 3D wireframes go from the highest resolution to 16 by 16. I have experimental ideas, but I'm not really sure in terms of the length of these pieces and the kind of angle, what would come next with that. I honestly am curious with how people feel. I know people that are good with the software I'm using are appreciating it, because I guess they know the complexity and how maybe unique it is to them. But I'm not sure how the wider collector base feels. I have no idea. I do have a piece with music on. It might be the first or second piece I ever minted. And I'm proud of that, but I don't know. I would love to do more sound design based pieces that are shorter, like the length of a GIF, but we'll see how that goes. For now, I'm just going to stick to this and maybe just do experiments here and there and see what comes out of it.